You can tell this is people who did well because in their academic results, because the front rows are all full. Normally in a lecturing situation, the back rows are all full, and you're lecturing across the kind of wall of pews for the first 7 rows. So well done. My name's Alex Broadbent. I'm the Dean of Humanities, and this event is to celebrate you and your achievements, mainly through the medium of a cocktail or two. But before that, we try and add some value and hopefully give you some guidance and advice and you know, something that will hopefully not be boring and long drawn out, but will be useful for you. So you're here because you've got, if you're a second year, you've got 75% or more on average, and if you're a third year or an honours student, you've got 70% or more. And these are very significant achievements because they're averages. So you've got to do well across the board. You can't just do well in one thing. And that suggests that you are intelligent and capable people, and that you're going to do good things. I wanted to talk a bit about the time. I mean, this is a crazy time for South Africa and for the whole world, because people are doing things they're not supposed to do. They're behaving in ways they're not supposed to do. And I don't mean that they're breaking laws. I mean, they do break laws, but they're doing things that weren't predicted. So, I mean, if you think about last year, there were 2 big events that weren't predicted. Does anybody know what they are? Famous world events that were just not predicted. Trump. And what was the other one? Brexit. So, two of the most studied. I mean, you know, you can be a career pollster in either Europe or America. You know, they're highly studied political environments and complete failure to predict those events. This year, most recently, of course, there's the events in Zimbabwe. I mean, in the news 3 weeks ago, there was nothing. There were no analysts saying, "Look, what's about to happen." And yet, there are many analysts, including, I'm afraid to say, plenty employed in my own faculty, who are now writing expertly about Zimbabwe. Which they've always done, but they certainly weren't writing 3 weeks ago saying, "Watch this space, see what's going to happen." Which is not to denigrate them. And then in the higher education sector, of course, there's the whole fees must fall thing, which happened, started in 2015, and we still have the effects now. Our exams, there are bouncers standing outside. That didn't used to be the case 3 years ago. Looking back, it seems obvious. You have a massive increase in student numbers. You don't have an increase at the same level as in government funding. You're going to have some kind of explosion because the fees go up, unemployment's going up as well. People at some point can't afford it, and there's going to be some explosion. So looking back, it seems kind of obvious. But in looking forward, nobody really saw that. Or at least if they did, it wasn't the majority of people. There were plenty of people who had no idea what was going to happen. Including myself. I took the job of dean at the start of that year. Perhaps I might not have done if I'd known what's going to happen later, I don't know. So, what's going on in the world? I think that what's going on is people aren't doing what scientists think they should do. So we increasingly rely on technical tools. We increasingly rely on technology to predict things. And that's quite successful sometimes. Google can predict the outbreak of a flu quicker than public health systems just by looking who has Googled flu symptoms in an area. So there are some respects in which one can use technology to understand and predict human behavior. But we're placing less and less trust, I think, in good judgment, good, sound, critical thinking, by intelligent, informed, reasonable people, probably discussing and disagreeing about things. Think how many projections and spreadsheets and so forth there must have been made about university finances before what happened in 2015. And all that stuff in the bin. The whole situation has changed now. All those 5-year plans. So I think that this is the age, people talk about the Industrial Revolution. It's the age of the 4th Industrial Revolution, the age of the technocrat. And in that context, the question arises, what is the value of the humanities disciplines, the disciplines that are studied in this faculty? And I think the answer is actually easier now than it was 2 or 3 years ago. When people ask me this, I just say, look around you, see what you see. You see a country and a world of huge inequalities, but with enough wealth to go around several times over. You see a world where people don't understand each other, they fail to understand each other. Republicans and Democrats in the United States, for example, fail to understand each other, and they don't even see the need to try to understand each other. And then people suffer for no obvious reason. Why has there been so much suffering in Zimbabwe? I mean, it's not easy to explain what that was for. And technology is not going to fix those problems. Good iPads and computers are not going to fix those problems. It's proved unable to predict any of the major events of the past couple of years: Trump, Brexit, Keaton's fall, the global financial meltdown before that, and recently the coup in Zimbabwe. And these are human events. They arise from human actions and human problems. So, to solve the problems of our times, what we need, we will get more technology, whether we want it or not, but we need more than that. We need good critical thinkers who have some insight into some aspect of human nature and who don't just accept what they're told. We need people who can think. The skill of being able to think is not something you hear about very much. You hear about, Google developing a self-driving car. You don't hear about the skill of critically thinking, of bringing information comes in. You don't just accept it or reject it. You evaluate it and you go through some process and you draw conclusions. And that's what the disciplines in the humanities are fundamentally about. Even though they differ widely, they share that core. And it's for this reason, incidentally, that humanities disciplines, humanities graduates do very well in executive management roles. So one of the things that humanities graduates end up doing is running things quite often, or playing a part in running things. And adapting to changing demands, which is also something that in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, analysts say, is going to be crucial. As jobs become automated, the ability to adapt. You have it's not just that you have some skill set and that's your job for the rest of your life. You have to be able to adapt over time. And that's again something that that arises from the ability to think well and critically. So anyway, that's my spiel, and I'm quite passionate about the value of the humanities disciplines. I just want to briefly now mention, for the benefit of third years who are considering doing honours, there are honours bursaries available. These next year will be full fee bursaries, so they'll cover registration and your fees. There's a fixed number of them dependent on the budget, and they're allocated based on academic performance in your academic degree and on being eligible and applying on time. So my advice is to apply for an honours bursary, either if you're planning to do it honours or if you're not sure and think you might, because it does add a lot of value to an undergraduate degree. It also opens the door for further study. So for honours students who are considering doing a master's, there are a number of different bursaries available. There are also actually for undergraduates, there are some other ones for undergraduates too. But for masters in particular, there's NRF funding, and the deadline for that is quite soon. And then there's various other things as well. I'm not going to just give you the information because you won't be able to remember it. But we have Mr. Msibi from the postgraduate school, who's right down here. And if you would like to find out about anything to do with bursaries for further study, for postgraduate study, either honours at master's level, he is the expert. Please talk to him. So what we're going to do now is have a panel discussion with some UJ alumni who are on my right. There is one more alumnus arriving. He's been delayed, but he will slot in if he arrives in time. So the idea of this is you'd be able to hear from them and engage with them. We'll have a few questions afterwards, and you can also engage with them informally to learn from their experiences, their failures, their successes, what they've done with their degree and with their lives. I remember when I was where you are, it's often quite daunting, like what am I actually going to do with myself? And the stock answers that aren't always very helpful, the ones you get in career pamphlets. It's often more helpful just to be able to actually talk. We've got our third panelist. Please come through, sir. Just in time. So I'm going to hand over to Professor Camilla Naidu on my far right, who is the Vice Dean Research in the faculty, and she is going to introduce the panel and chair the discussion.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to see all of you here today. And if you're here because your results have been excellent, this is an excellent show of great performance at UJ, in the UJ Humanities. I have the pleasure today of introducing you to three wonderful individuals who are going to be part of a panel, and they're going to be talking to us about what you could do with a humanities degree. And I'm just going to give you their names, and they're going to introduce themselves to you. Now, why they're important is because all of them have actually come through UJ themselves. They're ex-UJ students who represent for us successful students who've taken an honors degree or a humanities degree and have made it work for them. So I want to introduce you to Madeline Ozok, who is the Global Product Manager for DR Gaming Technologies, and Ms. Lesego Lebuso, who is the Acting CEO of Facet Sita, and Mr. Tebogo Ditsheko, who is the CEO and President of Ditsheko Media. Now, all of them have come through UJ with humanities degrees. So we want to invite you at some stage back, when you become successful, to address future generations of students. So I have some questions that I'd like to ask them, and they're going to try and address these questions in the course of talking to you. And as they talk, I'd like you to think about questions yourselves. So I'm going to give at least 5 of you an opportunity to ask them questions at the end of all the presentations. So what I'd like to ask them to think about is, how do they use this humanities degree, the degree that you are yourselves completing? How do they use their humanities degree to help them in the world of work? How did it work for them? What did they do to make it work? Now, often we hear about people saying humanities students have numerous skills, and sometimes we don't believe it. What are these skills that people talk about? Do we really have skills? So we're going to ask them a little bit about what are these skills that we can focus on and that we can recognize in ourselves to help us in our future endeavors. And the third question I'd like them to try and address for us is, as Prof. Broadbent has said, the world is changing. Things are happening all the time. So the humanities degree 10 years ago would be different from the humanities degree today. So what can we do with a humanities degree in 2018? What makes us innovative? How do we recognize the potential in the degree? And not just in South Africa, how can we use this degree beyond South Africa? So they're going to just try and not necessarily address all those elements, but help us to try and understand these issues. So we're going to start with Madeline.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I just want to say congratulations. It's a huge honor for you to be here. I think it's a great accomplishment. And if you start out this well, you can only do better going forward. I'm honored to share this special day with you, and hopefully I can share some stuff that you can take with you, and yes, afterwards, anytime if you want to come chat. So, yes, currently I'm Global Product Manager for DR Gaming Technologies. I have 4 development teams reporting to me, all IT guys, with my BA Humanities degree, and prior to that, for almost 4 years, I was the Group General Manager for Sun International Marketing. And prior to that, I was a Group Marketing for Tsogo Sun. And prior to that, for Aristocrat Technologies, which was an Australian company. I've been very privileged to have travelled the world. I started off in PR, and worked my way up. And I think what I would like to share today is, don't box yourself because you've got a humanities degree. You can be anything you want to be. I'm a global product manager, which is and it's a software company. It's a lot about software and technology and development and project management. And yes, prior I was in marketing, but I had a whole business intelligence team of Sun International reporting to me. So it was a lot about analysis and that sort of thing. So don't box yourself. I believe what the humanities degree gives you, it's very true what I see in my career, is everybody starts off and you need the technical skills, whether you're in finance, whether you're in HR, whether you're in marketing, everybody needs those technical skills when we start. What sets you apart and makes you a leader is your soft skills, is your leadership skills. Do you understand and respect other people and cultures? Do you understand that people have different personalities? Because the way that any company is going to see you as a leader is how do you treat other people? How do you influence other people to work as a team? And that's what humanities give you. I think people that come from humanities degrees are more people. And at the end of the day, you can't learn that in a textbook. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It's a wonderful privilege for me to be here. The last time I was at UJ, I was a student, and to come and share this honor with you, I think is a wonderful achievement. And so congratulations for having made it this far and the achievements that you have gained. And as Madeline has said, this is only the beginning. So for me, I chose to go into the humanities field precisely because I actually didn't have a very clear sense of what I wanted to be or what I wanted to study. All my friends at high school were very clear in terms of wanting to be CAs, going to IT, medicine, law, etc. And when I then decided to enroll for a degree, I specifically then wanted to go into the humanities field because of the versatility that it offers you. You have so many options that are open to you in terms of the direction that you can build your career in, but also who you become as a result of what you get exposed to academically, but also the opportunities that are then open to you because of the kind of grounding that you get. And it's not just the academic grounding that you benefit from, but it's how you apply it in terms of the world of work, but also how you also grow as a person. And how it ultimately opens those doors that you perhaps maybe may not have even thought possible. So for me, I have been working for just over 20 years now, and in that time, I have had the privilege of 5 careers. I started off in communications. I went into business development. I've worked in the science and technology field. I've managed a team of engineers, being non-engineer, female, and at the time I think I was 28. I've managed projects worth R500 million. I didn't study finance, but I have subsequently had to obviously understand the technicalities around it. I've since studied business. I now have an MBA as well. But what's gotten me this far is the ability to be able to connect with people firstly, the ability to be able to think critically, the ability to be able to take ideas, package them, commercialize them, sell them, and make them applicable to ordinary day-to-day people. I work in the financial services space now, a space that where we facilitate opportunities for chartered accountants, auditors, stockbrokers, etc. And it's a field where I'm able to operate quite successfully in because of the grounding that I have and the background that I have. Not because I need to read financial statements, although I can do that now, but largely because of the need for me to be able to solve problems. In my role as a CEO, that's largely what I do on a day-to-day basis. I manage risk. I'm confronted with challenges or problems that don't have predetermined solutions. And that for me is the best part of my job. The ability to be able to face complexity and not to be intimidated by it. The ability to be able to tap into a wealth of resources in terms of my network of people that I know, the experience of being able to come up with innovative ideas, going into complexities where things aren't necessarily easily figured out, but then the need to also engage with people socially, etc. I mean, we work in a service economy largely, where you are going to have to be, people-oriented, where you are going to have to know how to present yourself, how do you write, for example. A week ago, I was reading a report that was put together by someone who works as a CFO, a Chief Financial Officer, and it was tough for me to actually figure out what it is that they were actually trying to tell me. But largely because, what was written was not packaged very well, as an example. And because of that, this wonderful idea that he was trying to get across didn't manage to get to the point of success, simply because of the inability to be able to communicate, to present well, to write well. These are things that are often taken for granted. You think, well, how's that going to get me anywhere, really? But it says a lot about you in terms of how you present yourself, how you write, how you speak, how you engage with people, etc. Critically thinking, trying to solve the world's problems. I mean, the dean was talking about how we're faced today now with things we didn't know would have existed or we would have encountered. But the ability to be able to face up to those things and embrace them and not be afraid of them. But to also then not only be limited in terms of only having the technical ability, but the ability to be able to tap into what's often referred to as soft skills. But actually for me, those are such critical skills that you need to have in your arsenal as you build your career, because it's those things actually that sets you apart. It's those things actually that make the biggest difference. Being able to be solutions driven, being able to not be fazed by challenges, but to be able to take them head on. And so for me, really, I've been privileged to have had the wonderful opportunities I've had, largely because of the background and the grounding that I've had from a humanities degree. And many people get surprised because often, because I work in the financial services sector, people assume I have a BCom degree. And when I start off and say, well, actually I studied communications and industrial psychology, and then they kind of frown a little bit and say, but how is it that you're able to be so conversant about the technical aspects, but also then, be so competent in terms of, management, in terms of being able to deliver results, etc. But it's because of that very strong foundation that I actually think that you can't not have that kind of grounding that a humanities degree actually offers you. So you should actually be proud of the decision that you've made in terms of having gone into this field where humanities can offer you actually the world, being your oyster, because it doesn't limit you. It actually offers you the opportunity to pursue so many other avenues that you might not have thought would be available to you. So be proud of the choice that you've made, but also be encouraged that this is but only the beginning.
Good evening. Just give me 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So my name is Deborah Litella, the CEO of Litella Media, and the founder of Africa's biggest online book club, Read a Book SA, which we founded in 2012. I'm also the author of best-selling book Kasi Nerd, which we launched in 2006. And even though they say Really Club, we had the biggest book club this year, the biggest book launch. They say who's the Jacques Ball had the biggest book launch. It was actually a graduate from UJ who had the biggest book launch. The guy was speaking to The first president that I met was in 2014, the first African-American president of the United States, Barack Obama. I don't have a picture with him, but he did sign a I've met 10 presidents over the past 2 years. A very close contact of mine, Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, is a 33-year-old president of Austria. In Austria, they call it Chancellor. So I participated in the Austrian leadership program for international business leaders in March 2017. I've also met the deputy president of the country, I've met the president of the country about 8 times. In terms of my education, I studied up to honors degree in communications on this particular campus. While I was studying, I was a freelance writer, writing columns for various newspapers. I think that set me apart at the beginning of my career, because the Sowetan had already positioned me as one of the country's leading thinkers. I was around the age of 24 at that time. And it's not just me who achieved that, but over the past 3 decades, my father has been writing for newspapers across the globe. And so the Ditego name is something that I built on top of the foundation that he laid for me. And so you mustn't think that we started it all from scratch. You mustn't also think that it came easy. The African National Congress nominated me to serve on the board of the SABC in July 2017. I'm just trying not to forget certain things. I was included in Forbes magazine's. And my profile is a long walk to freedom. I was included in Forbes magazine's top 30 African entrepreneurs under the age of 30. That was in 2014. And this year I was voted the most influential young South African in business. I was also voted one of the top 100 most influential young Africans. And I also made my debut as an analyst for BBC World News this year. Follow a Twitter account at @19tetwa_SA. He's the Minister of Arts and Culture. I manage his social media accounts. So I think it's interesting when you look at what you could achieve with a communications degree. I think what is critical is for you to continuously ask yourself what separates you from your competition. What separates you from the person who's next to you? It's definitely not going to be your degree. It's definitely not going to be that you're a nice person. Of course, it's good to be a nice person. It's not going to be the fact that you're hardworking and you want it badly. Yeah, I forgot to mention. I'm also a judge in season 4 and season 5 of SABC One program, One Day Leader. So when I was explaining what I was doing during my studies, I mentioned that I was writing columns for newspapers. Now if you think, how many of you are currently writing letters for newspapers? Improving your writing, engaging in the public discourse, adding value to the public discourse, putting your name out there and building your brand. It could start within UJ, where you're writing for the UJ Observer. Perhaps you could be a reporter for UJFM and use that as a stepping stone to move to the next level. perhaps a bigger community radio station or a bigger community television station, until the moment you're writing for a bigger publication. There are other ideas that you might come up with, innovative ideas, and that's the power of having an honors degree, having just a normal degree. The power of that is that it improves your analytical thinking, your critical thinking, and your creative thinking. We're here to solve problems. If you don't have a problem to solve, then you don't have money to make. If you don't have a problem to solve, you might have not found your purpose in the world. And the problems can range from small to large. But every day of my life, I'm trying to solve a different problem. So with analytical thinking, you're able to take the bigger picture and break it down into small chunks so that you can understand it at a basic level. It becomes easier to evaluate, which means that it's easier to make decisions, to come up with solutions, and do it from an informed perspective. I don't know if you understand the power of coming up with solutions. Firstly, you have to understand what is the challenge so that you diagnose it correctly. So the issue was reading and being an intellectual was not really as cool as it should be for us to be competing with a country like South Korea. South Korea is home to some of the most innovative companies in the world. Your Samsungs, your Hyundai, they're from South Korea. And you'd be surprised that in the 1950s, South Korea was one of the top 5 poorest countries in the world. Currently, it is one of the 13 largest economies in the world, and I bet you half of you have a phone that was built from a company from South Korea. Samsung. Half of you. And that is because they were able to build a country of problem solvers. So when we started Read a Book Essay, we were solving the problem that being intellectual and reading is not cool. So what was the solution? Use social media to spread a culture of reading. Another solution, create a word, intellectual swag. So we coined a term called intellectual swag, which means it's cool to be intelligent. Now, a lot of the older librarians wouldn't be in a position to have come up with that word. But because it is a communications graduate, it is somebody who has learned the analytical skills necessary and someone with the background of the majority of the population, which is young people. 66% of South Africa's population is under the age of 35. And so we came up with that, and that is how it grew to be the biggest book club in Africa. And that's how we came up with Kasi Nerd, a nerd from the townships. So that book has received an endorsement letter from the Director General of Cultural Affairs in Austria. A book that's written in a mixture of South African language, isiZulu, Setswana, English, endorsed by the Director General in Austria. And so that will show you what is possible when you are able to solve problems. I think also what is important, besides asking yourself what separates you from the rest, is what are you doing to go the extra mile? So when I was a student, besides writing articles, I was participating in extramural activities. So I ran for the SRC, and the generations that are a bit older than you voted me into the SRC. So that became something that added value on my CV. And through the SRC, I learned how to become an independent thinker, how to take initiative, how to solve problems. I mean, there was a time where we organized a picnic and the service provider ran away with the money the day before the picnic, and I had to announce to students that there won't be a picnic. And now this is a communications graduate who is awesome at marketing. So you can imagine how many people were having FOMO over the picnic. That didn't happen. And so I had to raise $150,000. Sorry, guys, my mind is with all Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. Hey, I'm with Obama. So, I'm not with Donald Trump, I'm with Obama. So we had to raise $10,000, which is like 150,000 rands, within 30 days, and organize the picnic at Hartbeespoort Dam, and it happened. So those are the kind of problem-solving skills that you'll be able to get. And so, as you can see, my panelists, these are leaders in their respective industries. You have a CEO, you have a former general manager of marketing sitting in front of you, which means that there's endless possibilities with the degree that you have. It's all about how are you going to apply it. Thank you.